Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Development Diaries. This is a show where we interview leaders, innovators, change makers, movers and shakers from across the real estate development sector, learning about their career journeys, proudest moments, lessons learned along the way, and advice to their younger you. We also find out what excites them most about the real estate sector right now. I'm your host, John Guest, founder of Henry James Search and the Rebels Community, a group of good humans in real estate who come together to move the industry forward and challenge the status quo. On this episode of Development Diaries, I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Fleetwood, Chief Operating and Sustainability Officer and Head of the UK at Redevco. Chris joined the Redevco team in 2022 from Landsec, where he spent 12 years as a Development Director. And Chris is also a part of the ULI Europe Urban Regeneration Council. Chris, welcome to Development Diaries. What a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, John. Absolutely delighted to be invited along.
I'm looking forward to this one and diving into your background, sharing some of the lessons from your career. We've known each other for a while, and I'm sure the listeners will get loads of value from some of the things you picked up. So let's dive in. We like to start on Development Diaries by going back a few years. So could you share with the listeners a little bit more about how you ended up in the wonderful world of development? Was it written in the stars, or were there a few sliding doors moments along the way?
I'm not so sure it was necessarily written in the stars, and I definitely think there were some sliding doors moments, but I'm going to rewind a few more years, if I may. So like your previous guest, I'm also a Brummie. I was born in Birmingham and formative years in Small Heath. For those of you that watch Peaky Blinders, that is where Peaky Blinders is set. So my background is a very modest background. So I was in Birmingham up until about the age of 10, moved down to the south coast, was fortunate to go to the local grammar school where they took careers very, very seriously. And when I was about 15, they set up a careers fair for all of our students in that particular year. And the usual suspects are there, the accountant, the lawyer, the lion tamer. And on the basis that I thought I'm probably not going to be the next Trevor Francis for Birmingham City, I'd better go along, have a chat and see what the future might or might not hold for me. And fortuitously, I got chatting to a chartered surveyor. Had never really considered the built environment as my future. But probably spent about 45 minutes with this guy. I don't know his name, I don't know his company, but he was a pivotal part of my journey in life, basically. And I came away from that conversation really inspired by the multifaceted world of real estate surveying, and what it might mean for me, how I can help communities and really change the world around us. So a really, really inspiring conversation. So, that was one of those moments in life that you genuinely remember. So that really set me on a course to think, okay, how do I do this? So, applied to university, ended up doing a real estate course, the traditional way of getting into this industry. So went to university end of the 80s, market was good. Finished in 91, the market was utterly dreadful. I remember just writing many application letters to all and sundry, literally trying to get a job. Fortunately for me, I'd done some summer work with a surveying practice / estate agency down on the south coast, and they did actually offer me a job so I could start on my APC, which was great. So I did about 18 months working for them. I was doing things like helping on house valuations, surveys, a little bit of commercial, so a real mixture of things, but it wasn't actually what I wanted to do long term. And being an estate agency, they were open on a Saturday and I was expected in the office on a Saturday morning, which was good and bad. The good bit was when the postman arrived, and those of a certain age will remember the Estates Gazette, the actual physical form. So as soon as the Estates Gazette came through the letterbox, I was there picking it up. The boss thinking I was being very diligent, learning all about the industry, where in fact I was going straight to the back pages, where all the job adverts were. And this one particular morning, I saw this job advert for a graduate surveyor to work in Birmingham, funnily enough, for Phoenix Beard. So I ended up applying for a role there. Had an interview with a gentleman called Andy Robinson, and I'm not sure whether he saw something in me or whether I was the only applicant for the job, but ended up going to Phoenix Beard, working in Birmingham to finish my APC, which was my first real step into the proper commercial world, fully commercial, really working in retail warehouse, agency and advisory. So Andy took a punt on me, which again was one of those moments that pivoted my career again. From there, went to what was Jones Lang Wootton in Hanover Square for a few years, and basically retail warehousing on the agency side, and I was loving it. Had no intention, absolutely no intention of leaving that environment. A good friend of mine, Jimmy Boyd Phillips, was working for a subsidiary company of Sainsbury's, JSD, Sainsbury Developments, at the time. And he nagged me a couple of times to go and see his boss because there was a potential role working for JSD. And I kept saying no, but in the end, gave in, went along to see Barry Henderson with no intention of leaving JLW. Had a really great hour with Barry. I walked out of that meeting thinking, you know what, development is absolutely for me. So that was back in 1998, so a very long time ago. But that is where my career in development actually started.
Yeah, some amazing sliding doors there. So to kind of summarize, chartered surveyor with no name who you met at a career fair, but maybe we need to do a second episode tracking that person down and reuniting. Estates Gazette landing on the doorstep, being the quickest across the floor to get it, to look at all the industry press / the job adverts in the back. That person giving you a shot and taking your career from the South Coast right into the heart of the West End. I mean, working in Hanover Square has got to be one of the best places to be. And then, probably using your network to then be nagged into an interview / coffee. Sometimes I tell people, what have you got to lose by meeting good people? And probably a good example there of putting yourself outside your comfort zone a little bit and it paying you back. So thanks for that. So, the kind of engineering the career from the early agency days into development, you touched a little bit on how that came about, but could you share a little bit more about, was development something that you saw and you thought that's what I want to do, or did that come a little bit later?
It was one of those, I hadn't really considered development as a career option because I was really enjoying the agency side of life. Really enjoyed being at JLW, great team, great instructions. But sitting down with Barry and others at JSD, it opened my eyes to a wider perspective, and also being more on the decision-making side, which did appeal. So it wasn't something that I expected to end up doing, but when I really sat down and thought about it, and thought about the opportunities it would afford me, and the ability to change locations and the environments for people either working in buildings or the stakeholders around, it really did appeal.
So you saw kind of similar but different, same sector but different role, sliding further up the food chain, if we can use that term, in terms of decision making, and that's what appealed to you in terms of making that switch.
Yeah, so it wasn't a complete differential in terms of the assets that I was going to be dealing with, because a lot of the stuff that we were looking at JSD was out of town retail. So I had a network. I knew all the players, the runners and the riders. It was really more the technical stuff. So literally on day one, you have several files put on your desk, and it's like, come and have a chat if you have a problem. But I was surrounded by great people, and the lawyers, the architects, the internal teams as well. And when you're surrounded by good people, you absorb as you go along, sponge their knowledge. It was a massively steep learning curve, but honestly, I was there for 2 years, but it was fantastic before moving on to Parkridge, which was a very different environment. Developer trader, working for John Cutz's firm. John being well known as the godfather of sheds, but the element I was dealing with was again on retail development predominantly.
So talking a bit, we touched on Parkridge, the next chapter, and as I said at the start of the episode, you've had a really impressive career to date. Could you talk us through a little bit more of the chapters up until now and share some of your proudest achievements along the way?
Yeah, of course. So I did 8 or 9 years at Parkridge, and then following that, I moved across to Land Securities, or Landsec as it is now. So I did 12 years there, development director, saw 3 CEOs in that time. A real evolution of that business. In terms of proudest moments or projects, I'd probably say that actually going back to my homeland in Birmingham, we did a project up in Selly Oak in Birmingham. So when I joined Landsec, it was probably, I think, September 2009, and Landsec had a joint venture with Sainsbury's called the Harvest Partnership, looking at how we could do developments with the Sainsbury's and other things. And not long after I joined, they asked us to look at a site in Selly Oak that they'd owned for a little while. It was 30 acres, of which we were going to look at developing 20. They'd looked at it with different development partners and hadn't quite made it work. So over the next 10 years, that one came to fruition. It was multi-phase. It was multi-use. We did a Sainsbury's store, 120,000 square foot up on stilts. It was a relocation from somewhere else where they were in Selly Oak. Another 80,000 square feet of retail, but also it was my first PBSA scheme as well. So we did a 418 bed student block right on a canal, which we sold to Unite. But it was one of those projects where it was known as the battery site, not batteries as in car batteries, but batteries as in metal batching, battery of metal. So historically, a lot of nasties in the ground. So before we could start on site, I think there was around 2 years of decontamination works. I mean, it was bad. So there were many things about this project. We came up with, or the lawyers did, pie crust lease, for the site. We had a canal on one side, we had a railway line on another, we had power lines going across that served the major hospital. We had to deal with the Canal and River Trust with all of the regulations and legislation that goes along with that. We also built a bridge across the canal, which looks great now, but took a long time to negotiate. So it was a great team effort. Some people came over that 10 years. Some people came and went. It was great work from the leasing team, the architects, the engineers, the internal team, the planners. It was properly a team effort. It's not the sexiest scheme ever. It's not a King's Cross. It's not a Battersea. But in terms of a team pulling together and actually getting the thing done when many before us had not done it, that was a great sense of satisfaction.
What would you say your main lessons learned from that experience was? Because that sounds like real granular, heavy lifting, proper placemaking.
Yeah. So lessons there are, if you don't work as a team, you're going to fail, is one. But also the assumptions of yesterday aren't necessarily going to be the assumptions of today or tomorrow. So there were a number of reworkings of designs, layouts, and various things. So it's staying abreast of the market. What are the occupiers wanting? What are the institutions wanting? There were so many things that as in all developments, that problems coming up each and every day. But again, it a little bit like the JSD scenario. You surround yourself with good people. You put your trust in them, and fingers crossed, things work out.
And fast forwarding to today, as you said, you were at Landsec for 12 years, a long stint of time, and not everyone has had that in their career. I think sometimes people do miss the chance to stay somewhere long enough to see a scheme all the way through, because you quite rightly pointed out that one took, did you say 10 years? If you leave halfway through and you do that a couple of times, you're kind of piecing it all back together. So it must have been good for your knowledge to see every single phase of that. You then joined Redevco. What have been the highlights since you've been there? Because I know you've been in a few different roles. You've taken on more and more responsibility in the time that I've known you. How's that been going, and what are you most proud of?
Yeah, so it's 4 years, just over 4 years now, and an awful lot has happened in that period. I mean, I joined January 2022, initially to really just look after the UK, but from not just a development perspective, it was a wider role. It was also the asset management side, property management side. But within 6-7 months, that spiraled into a pan-European role. Becoming head of global asset and development management. So taking responsibility for development, asset management, and property management, but across all of our platform. For those that are not familiar with Redevco, we currently have around 11 billion euros under management across Europe. We've got offices in 6 countries. There's about 240 of us. We are 26 a bit years old, but the heritage is over 180 years old, because we're part of a much bigger family of businesses, which is owned by Cofra, which essentially started with CNA. Now, those of an age will understand who CNA are. They've not been in the UK for over 25 years, but are still big across Europe. So Clemens and Auguste, who set that business up 180 odd years ago, set in train and in motion a bigger business than just retailing. We have sister companies that deal with private equity. We've got Brugal, we've got Amphos, we've got Sunrock, which do PV panels. We've got some, when I say we, I mean Cofra, have got sustainable farming businesses over in the States. But there's a golden thread that runs through all of these businesses, which is, make money, but just do the right thing. So be in business for good, which really resonated with me when I first started to talk to Redevco. And then I then became deputy COO a couple of years ago. We had a change of leadership here. So Neil Slater joined us from Aberdeen. And the business has expanded its scope in terms of what we do, in terms of the asset classes, but also things like debt and opportunistic buying. So last summer, I then became Chief Operating and Sustainability Officer. So taking that sustainability hat as well. The sustainability piece has always been part of my Redevco role, but more from making sure that the teams are doing it, and now I'm putting the theory and the practice together, so that we go from that sort of talking about it and reporting to proper implementation.
Yeah, and fascinating journey, and as I said just now, taking on more and more responsibility along the way. Is there any advice to your younger you that you would particularly give around that stepping up into a leadership position? So your career has gone from agency into development to being more project based, to being more leadership, operations, asset management, property management, sustainability, and it's become much more multifaceted. Now, I guess it's impossible to be in the detail of everything the more senior you get. But how did you find that transition, and what would be the key lessons that you'd share around that?
Yeah. So my advice to my younger self. So a number of years ago, I would have definitely said I was much more introvert than I am now. Definitely would have suffered from imposter syndrome, looking around at my peer group, looking at my humble beginnings, and I would say believe in your ability. Take a wider view of what's going on around you. I think when I first started in the businesses, I just did my job. I didn't look around and think, oh, there's the chief executive. I'm going to be that one day. That was not that sort of thinking wasn't part of me many years ago. Now I see youngsters come in now, and they have clear maps in their head of, I'm going to go here, 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 and then I'm going to be the boss. Many years ago, that wasn't part of my thinking. I think one of the things I would say to myself is be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if you don't push yourself out of the comfort zone, you don't really learn as you should or as quickly as you should. Also take a wider look of what's going on in the world, particularly in the financial world. Look at the competing assets that the money is chasing. Don't just concentrate on property. Have a wider perspective on financial dynamics of the economy, both nationally but also internationally.
So be inquisitive about other parts of the macro, while executing on the micro. I think there's some really good lessons there. So believe in yourself, be inquisitive, execute. Sounds like you didn't have a linear plan laid out, and whether some people do, some people don't, and I don't think there's necessarily an exact answer. I think your career and the conversation we've had already has proven that if you had two linear path, you might not have taken some of the opportunities that presented themselves. So it's an element of being in the right place, being opportunistic, and actually, if you execute on your role, then people give responsibility to those that they trust to do that. So actually, some of that comes. Whereas if you think too much about what I'm going to do next and don't concentrate on executing in your job, you might not even get there. So I think there's some good lessons to learn. I think we're grateful that you ended up in development as a sector. We're grateful to the Chartered Surveyor at the Careers Fair. We're grateful for the postman that delivered the Estates Gazette. We're grateful for Barry and others that gave you a shot. But if you didn't end up in development, have you ever thought about what you might have ended up doing instead?
Well, I have two big passions other than property, which are music and fitness. So on the fitness side, I qualified as a gym instructor probably when I was about 20 or 21, and then latterly as a personal trainer. And it's that fitness side has always been a big thing for me. In fact, just before I started my job on the South Coast, I'd actually investigated the possibility of bringing a franchise of World or Gold's Gym into the UK. But then I got the job in property, and so that never happened. So possibly be a personal trainer or own my own gym. The other bit is music. And John, as you know, we've had a bit of a conversation about this in the past. But when I was at Jones Lang Wootton, a couple of guys joined there, Jeremy Greenland and Richard Bloxham. Jeremy, a legend of the now legend of the logistics world, and Richard Bloxham, who's still at JLL and is actually quite important. We formed a band back in mid late 90s, and played all the local London haunts and venues. Rich then decided he wanted to go and work in Europe, so he went off. So we lost our keyboard player, but he kindly loaned us his brother, who could also play keyboards. And then latterly Jasper Masters of CBRE, he joined us as the drummer. So music was a big part of it. But as we were on our journey around all these different venues, we came across a band called Officer Kicks, who came and supported us on one of our shows. And we got to know these guys. That we supported them, they supported us on various things. And I remember driving from a site inspection one day somewhere up north, coming down the M1, and I got a call on the mobile from the lead singer of this other band. And they were actually signed to a record label at the time. And he said, "Chris, look, we don't want to do the second album with this record label." I said, "Yeah, fair enough. You do what you need to do." And he said, "You're a businessman." I went, well, I sort of chuckled to myself. And he said, "Well, why don't you set up a record label?" and we'll come and sign with you. I just thought it was the craziest conversation I've ever had. Anyway, 2 hours later, by the time I got home, I thought it was actually the best idea I've ever heard. So I actually did set up a record label, signed these guys, went and recorded the second album with them at Dean Street Studios, which is where Adele, Ed Sheeran, David Bowie have all done recordings. It's very, very famous studios. Released the album, toured with these guys. They did Glastonbury, they did Secret Garden Party, they did the Festival on the Isle of Wight. We released stuff over in Japan, across Europe, and this was a sort of a sideline to my real job. So I was doing my development work, and then as the sort of hobby, the record label. So in the 2 weeks before I started at Landsec, I was on tour with Officer Kicks. We were with the Script, supporting the Script in Ireland on their homecoming tour. So going from a couple of weeks of rock and roll to putting my suit and tie on to start my first day at Landsec was a bit of a shock of culture. But the record label and the music was great fun. When you recontract from one sector to another, you can learn lessons and take those lessons, and it's about absorbing information quickly and learning. So whether it's starting out in development and sponging all the learnings, same with the music business. But we had great success, not commercially, not financially for me either. But Sky Sports used to use the music on a lot of their Champions League. The BBC used it several Winter Olympics ago, and one of the magazines, in fact, did the top 10 rock albums of 2010. So number 1 was Slash, number 6 was Bruce Springsteen, and we were in at number 3. So not too bad. So critical acclaim, financial disaster. So what would I do if I wasn't in property? Well, on the basis I lost so much money on the music, probably the fitness.
Yeah, and makes you well qualified to spec out the fitness facilities in some of your buildings, curate the playlists. That feeds back into real estate. So not sure if Redevco know quite the skills they've got on the leadership team. But yeah, what a journey. But yes, you ended up in real estate development, and we're all pleased about that. But yeah, some amazing stories to tell. Knowing what you know now and having worked with a lot of different development individuals, what do you think makes, on top of what you've already discussed, what are the skills most needed when we're building our team? What makes an exceptional development individual? Is there a secret formula? And can it be distilled?
There's definitely a number of things that you need. Definitely a number of things. Firstly, you definitely need patience. These things always take longer than your initial appraisal. What should have been a relatively straightforward thing at Celio took 10 years, and that was a retail warehouse park and a PBSA. Development is a long game, so patience is a virtue. If you're in development, you need the ability to be the conductor of the orchestra. You're the one there guiding all the various disciplines. You've got oversight of all the professional team, and that's internal and external, as well as coordinating all of the messaging, again, stakeholders, but also upstairs at the board level, or to whoever your client is. You're not expected to know all the answers, but you should know what questions to ask. I think that's really key. So yeah, there's a number of things there. You need good financial acumen. You need an eye for detail. You need to be comfortable challenging people, but you also need to be comfortable being told a different answer and having the ability to recognize when somebody else is right and you may not be. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things there that I'm not sure it's a secret sauce, but all of those attributes are really, really needed.
And they're all pretty much behavioral, right? We didn't touch on anything too technical. I think the conductor is a phrase that I've not necessarily heard or used before, but it really well sums up that kind of low ego, dealing with different people in parts of the supply chain, understanding how to motivate them, bringing them on a journey. You mentioned lessons learned from the scheme that you worked on, being around collaboration. And unless you have that, so being the person at the top or in a senior position of the whole design team and the whole professional team, how you bring people onto a journey, understand their role in it, motivate them when you're not actually managing them day to day pastorally. You know, it's a slightly different type of leadership, is a common theme that I've seen with a lot of successful development people. Are there any mistakes that people make in their career that you have seen and wish they wouldn't?
I think, particularly in development, the one thing that I try to instill is when you're making decisions or looking at taking a particular course, is not to just look at it in a very short term, that's an answer, it works, let's do it, is to really think about the ripple effects and the ramifications of that, of all of your decisions, because they may work for now, but what are the implications on the wider scheme, but also on a time frame perspective. You agree particular things in contracts, either with, in planning or with occupiers or with adjoining owners or wherever it might be, which initially may allow you to take the next step, but may hinder the long-term success of whatever you're trying to achieve. So it's really sort of helicoptering out sometimes and saying, okay, if I do this, what are the implications? What are those ripple effects? And yeah, some people are better at doing that than others.
Are there any mistakes that you see people make in their career along the way that you really wish that they wouldn't?
The one thing, and you alluded to it earlier, so in development is jumping ship too early and not seeing things through in a fuller way. Sally, it was 10 years. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should stick around in a job for 10 years, 15 years, whatever it might be. But I do think that when people are recruiting, and you'll know this better than I, that in development especially, you do like to see that ability to see something through, or at least the majority of something through, to get that rounded experience.
Yeah, I'm always interested in the why behind moves, and some of them make complete sense. There's certain businesses in the sector that you kind of understand why someone would have moved on from. There are others that are actually really good places, and maybe it was just a little bit of lack of patience. It's a game of resilience. As you said, it's a game of patience. It's how have they navigated some of those challenges? Have they just voted out at the first opportunity, or have they seen some of them through? Because none of this is easy, putting it all together, and changing the company doesn't change all of those things anyway. It doesn't make planning easier. It doesn't make remediation of a really contaminated site easier. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be dealing with a different team or a different council. So sometimes people have decided to take a slightly easy route. So I think it's, as you say, it's important to understand the why, but I always also like to see a little bit of tenure, resilience, grit, learning, growth, putting your hand up like you have throughout your career. I think those are the things that are the secret. So when we're running a search for someone, we'll always focus a lot more on the behaviors than we do on the functional, and how we assess for those. So fast forwarding to today, we know the industry has gone through unprecedented change over the last 5 years. We've had several events that we may not ever see again in our lifetimes. We know that there's challenges, but we're not here to talk too much about them. Fast forwarding over the next 3 to 5 years with Redevco, what do you think you're most excited about? What are the biggest opportunities out in the market right now? What gets you out of bed in the morning, into the gym, and then straight to the desk with a smile on your face?
Yeah. So a number of things. So from the development side, we look after, as I mentioned earlier, about 11 billion euros of kit. Now, within that, there's a churn of things that need to be redeveloped, refurbished, knocked down, given some TLC. And we've got some great projects, across Europe. We've just finished one on Oxford Street, in fact, which was a deep retrofit of what was Gap a number of years ago. But we've now put Puma in there, one of their European flagship stores. That's a great example of us doing a holistic refurbishment of a building, where we've changed it basically from a retail building with some offices above to an office building with some retail below by changing the floor plates and the uses. We've gone up onto the roof. When I first joined Redevco, I went up onto the roof in the first few weeks of that building, and it was just covered in plant, old M&E, but it was a huge roof, and it's like, hang on, there's an opportunity here. And likewise in the basement, we've gone into there and we've put a gym in, end of journey facilities, the showers, the fluffy towels, the bike racks, all of that. And it's now a really lovely place as an office worker to have a proper entrance, and a proper grown-up office, I would say. So we have a number of those across Europe that we're dealing with now in Paris, in Hamburg, Geneva, and over the next few years we have a number of those to do. So that's the on the development side. In terms of sectors, we acquired a logistics platform towards the end of last year, and that is a young team with a very tenacious. So there's a lot of things coming across the IC at the moment from those guys. So the logistics for us in various forms is getting very interesting, including iOS. In terms of retail warehousing, which obviously I've been involved in for forever and a day, Redevco has been in that space for many years. We bought into that in the UK at the back end of 2024 with the purchase of 16 properties from Oxford Properties. And then last summer we did a deal with CBRE-IM to set up a fund to roll out retail warehouse fund across Europe. So retail warehousing is a big conviction play for us. And another bit, when I joined the business that we did not have, Neil has come in, as I mentioned earlier, and set up a debt business. And that's a really interesting space for us. It's very much a brown to green commitment. We did our first deal in the City of London, actually, I think it was about April of last year, where we're taking an 80s office building. Well, we're just lending the money. The guys are taking that to a great sort of grade A spec, top ESG credentials. The second deal was in Germany, 2 logistics sheds, but that's built ground up. But again, absolute top spec from a sustainability perspective. So I think that's a really interesting space, and I know that we've expanded the team very recently on the debt side here, because we can see the importance of that to the business. So retail warehousing, logistics, debt, and that urban regeneration play, all great things.
Yeah, lots to be excited about. It's really pleasing to see the business, despite some of the market challenges, having conviction, changing its course a little bit, expanding its horizons, and continuing to grow. And I think that's done really well in the industry in terms of people's awareness of the brand, what it does. That's grown definitely substantially over the last few years as well. So you've been busy. You've been M&A, living, logistics, debt, brown to green office, expanding your role from being UK focused into Europe. How have you kept on top of all of those things, and how has the move into Europe, what would someone know if they're thinking about, do I want to take on a European role going forward? Do I want to go and look at other territories? What would your advice be to that person? What have been the main lessons you've learned? And how does it mean you operate differently?
Well, the great thing is that our business language is English. So thankfully, I'm very fortunate that my colleagues have very good English. Otherwise, I'd be in real trouble. I mean, I was in Rotterdam and Amsterdam over the last few days, actually, and looking at some of the residential development we've got over there, as well as some of our standing assets. What I would say to anybody thinking about doing this sort of role is, if you're not used to getting up early in the morning for those first flights out of London or wherever, you're in for a shock, because you tend to have pretty long days. I mean, it's great fun, but you end up going to wherever you're off to, Madrid, meet the team over there. It's a very early start. You do a full day, and then obviously the team want to take you out for dinner. And obviously in Madrid, you don't have early dinners, so you end up being awake for a very long time, and then doing it all again the next day. So it's great fun. You learn an awful lot. There are so many similarities between the markets, so many differences between the markets and the cultures. I found it a real privilege actually to work with so many different people, and staying on top of the detail, as you say earlier, is almost impossible. But again, it's about having great people on the ground, and that's what we have here. Is we've got really good teams, solid professionals that know exactly what they're doing. They know their markets inside out. So I don't have any concerns and worries. And I'm here really as a sounding board some of the time, as opposed to getting into the weeds with them, because unless they ask me to, there's no necessity for me to, if you know what I mean.
And have you been able to capture lessons from some of your European colleagues when it comes to things like sustainability, when it comes to procurement, when it comes to how to operate a building? How transferable is all of that? And do you feel it gives you a bit of a competitive advantage now, having so much exposure rather than just the way the UK has always done it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, some of our colleagues in Belgium, for instance, they've rolled out massive PV installations. We had about 1.8 billion, I think, of kit in Belgium, majority of which was retail warehousing, so lots of roofs. And we had a project over the last sort of 4 or 5 years to roll out a lot of PV installations there. So other countries have looked at how they've done it. Now, laws and leases are obviously different in different countries, but that some of the principles you can transfer. And in terms of some of the refurbishments and redevelopments, when we've started to do things, we've tried to share that knowledge between the different teams, so it's not just what's done in Germany stays in Germany. There's definitely a mindset of sharing where we can and where it makes sense. We do try to innovate a little with some of the things that we do. The one that I like to mention when I'm doing these sort of things is in Geneva. We've got a listed building there that we're heavily refurbishing. It's an old CNA, and the team are doing a fantastic job. That's coming off the gas grid, and we're linking into Lake Geneva to have carbon neutral heating and cooling. So just an unusual solution.
Yeah, wow, that sounds very innovative and uniquely placed to be able to do that. Well, what a fascinating journey, taking on responsibility as you go. Working with people, I think, is one of the common themes I've picked up through this episode. So empowering people to make decisions, but also trying to keep on top of the business plan and the strategy. That sounds like it's been essential for you. And probably goes back to your earlier days where, your network put you in front of people because they obviously liked you and trusted you. You built that confidence in your own skin and removed some of that imposter syndrome. So no, thanks for sharing all of that. And I'm sure listeners will take some really key messages from it. It's tradition on the podcast to answer a question from the guest before. So Sonny at Glenbrook kindly left, as you say, fellow Brummie, kindly left a question for you, which was, with capital becoming more discerning, what unique leadership qualities are needed to attract more institutional investment and to bring more capital in general into the UK property sector? What do you think?
Well, firstly, thanks, Sonny, for that nice, easy curveball. So, I mean, in times of global uncertainty, investors generally want markets with stability, predictable growth, and generally resilient fundamentals. fortunately, UK PLC generally does pretty well in terms of transparency, maturity, political stability to a point, and legal structures that generally attract foreign capital. I think where we are lacking is the growth element when we compare ourselves to places like the US and APAC. So government and the public sector generally has a hugely important leadership role to play, but that's only part of the picture because legislation is generally slow, and policy can sometimes be more of a hindrance, even if it's trying to help. An element of that leadership has got to come from the real estate industry itself and some of the bodies. And I think a good example of that is the UK real estate organisation that's been the recent merger of BPF, IPF, and ARIF. They're very focused on the advocacy of the UK real estate abroad, which is great. And then there's the private sector, with investment from the likes of ourselves. Investors are seeking clarity generally in a higher cost of capital world. Investors are becoming much more analytical and forensic than they ever have been before. I think global capital is looking for local expertise, but also combining that with operational excellence. And leaders basically, they need to adapt because yesterday's assumptions are now getting challenged. There's increased scrutiny on governance, quality of data, and execution ability. So the leadership qualities are the ability to anticipate, to adapt, and to be resilient. I guess uncertainty is opportunity. But if we go back just to something like London, that is a leading city of the world and probably punches above its weight even in a post-Brexit environment. But it's a huge question. But I think in general the UK stands pretty well. There's challenges for sure. But we in the real estate industry, have got to show resilience and some forward-looking adaptability and anticipation.
That all makes sense, and I think you've done well to summarize that in less than an hour conversation, because that's a whole another topic. The mood music is not always been positive. I think it's on all of us as leaders in real estate to share a bit more good news with people we speak to, talk about the benefits of the sector, be that attracting talent at the bottom level to attracting investment at the top. The sector, as you said, it is, there's a lot more scrutiny around partnerships. There's a saying that often used to navigate the pandemic, which was a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. So maybe some of the capital is now looking at its partners, operating partners, supply chain with a bit more of a fine tooth comb in terms of, can you actually deliver operationally? A lot of asset classes are moving to be more operationally intense, and the capital's looking to capture some of the upside of the operating entities, as well as just the development play. And as you said, the local expertise. So can we put faith in you to deliver in this part of the market, in a market that is maybe not as easy as it was a little while ago? So I guess everyone's got to be better, and for that, as you said, it leads to opportunity for those that are genuinely the best and can tell that story the best and can deliver. Then there's still plenty to go around, and it is a pretty resilient country, luckily. I still firmly believe it's up there with the best cities in the world.
Absolutely.
So in return for racking your brains and putting together an answer for Sonny's question, would you like to leave a question for the guest that comes next, Chris?
I would. So it's really about social mobility. So how do we as an industry shine a light on the opportunities that are available in the built environment to those that are at school? to attract the top talent from all parts of society. I think that's a topic I'd like to listen to next.
Well, that sounds like a great question for someone to answer, and that could be a whole podcast series in itself. Improving the reputation of the sector and educating. I mentioned on the previous podcast with David Partridge around regeneration brainery and going into a school and talking to people that were at an age like you were, where you're deciding what to do. I think, as I said, they came up with 3 roles within property. That was it. They didn't know about development, didn't know really about quantity surveying. They didn't know about design, management, construction as a whole. There is a lot more.
There absolutely is. I did some work when I was at Landsec with Construction Youth Trust, and exactly that. The lack of understanding of what the built environment can offer people literally is huge, but people are just unaware, and it would be great for youngsters to understand that there can be really fulfilling careers for them in our industry.
Creating buildings rather than creating YouTube channels.
Yeah, something physical.
Chris, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I know that you're, as you said, lots of early mornings, lots on at the moment. So I really appreciate you taking time to share some of your lessons with us today. I'm sure those that have listened have found them super insightful, and a pleasure to have you.
John, thanks very much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Your support means the world. Please feel free to like, share, or pass the podcast on to a friend or colleague. Do drop me a line with any suggested topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes and recommendations of guests that you would love to see us interview. Till next time, go well.